Airport to the office, I was told that Tim Kaine was the one who had Virginia's future, was best for Virginia's future. Through the years, I can't tell you how humble he has remained. Just a couple very quick personal stories. When Alicia was in the Trail of the Lonesome Pine in 2008, and this man was in national news being considered for vice president, I went up to him and said, "Tim, could you call my mom and say how wonderful her granddaughter is?" And here he was, the governor of Virginia, and he called my mom, and they talked for an hour about family and Big Stone Gap and Arlington County, and that's the sort of person he was. Flash forward again to a year and a half or a year ago, Alicia. We went to see Tim in Abington, and Alicia says, "I'm thinking about maybe running for House of Delegates." And Tim says, "If you run, I'll be there. I'll come down for you." And she says, "Okay." She runs. We had a great Democratic year. People in competitive seats. We were not deemed competitive. That didn't stop him. He came down here the week before the election and gave a great speech for Alicia, and it was just a fantastic. But he does this not just for supporters, he does this for everyone. As mayor of Richmond, he had innovations that people still talk about in Richmond. As governor, he was a great governor, and he should be vice president. We all know that he should be vice president. But fate and James Comey and the Russians had different things in mind. So although we're very sad that you're not Vice President of the United States, we're so glad you're here. And let me say one other thing. They want to stay anonymous, but I have two prominent Republicans who have told me they're voting for Tim Kaine. And I'll tell him afterwards who that is. So without further ado, my friend and all of our friends, Tim Kaine.
Hey, Greg, thanks. Hey, thank you all. This is great. Well, it does my heart so well to be here with you in Big Stone, and I have some folks with me on my staff. Tyler Brandon Kaine, spelled differently than me. That's his first name, Kaine. And where is Maya? Maya is here somewhere. Maybe she's outside. And then I also have a buddy from Richmond who's traveling with me this weekend, Tom, who is somewhere close. He may come in a minute. But some of these guys have been to Big Stone with me, and some have never been. And I'll tell you, when I tell anybody on my staff that I'm coming to anywhere in Appalachia, or Big Stone in particular, they all fight to be the one that gets to come with me, because they've heard me talk about you and about this community. Doug, I've known you really since I was running the first time in 2001, and have seen you do great leadership. And there have been years where they've been good Democratic years, and there have been years that have been tough Democratic years, but you are just a pillar, and you do such a good job for this community. And I really appreciate what you do and admire what you do, and I thank you for being here today, and all of you for coming. And Greg, his parents, Art and Vivian, right? Art and Vivian? Mm-hmm. Yeah, just dear, dear people. And I met them through mutual friends living in Richmond and Arlington, and that was how I first got to know Greg. And I remember Alicia as a baby. And then I remember Alicia as a big actress in Trail of Lonesome Pine. And then Alicia and I not only had fun at that event we did in Norton, but then you and I went over to the Compact together over in Castlewood and had a really good discussion with folks around the table about mine, coal, health, pension, all the issues that were important. And it was interesting, my staff was telling me today, I said, "You remember that event that Alicia and I did together in Norton?" And one of my staffers said, "Yeah, I remember that one, but I thought Alicia was particularly good when we were sitting around the table talking to people over at the UMW Compact." So you expect more great things from her, and it is really nice to be back. I came a little bit early. I hadn't been to the visitor center before. I went into the visitor center, and we got lucky because there's a group of kids from Mountain Empire Community College. I think they go by Miss Ellie's String Band in honor of their teacher who was passed. And they were prepping for a concert next week down at Natural Tunnel, and they let me sit in and play Old Joe Clark for them. So, it's like, yes, get a little music in. If I didn't, it would be like, was I really here or not? So it was fun to do that, and fun to come talk to you about the country, about what's at stake in 2018, and to thank you for your help and seek your continued support. It is a challenging time. I mean, this week we're in session, and convictions and guilty pleas and is the North Korea summit on or off? I mean, it just seems like every day there's just so much out there. And the issue is you can chase after the issue of the day, or you can kind of stay on your game and try to work on things that matter, and that's what I try to do as your senator. I'm run because I really like my job. I have a real simple theme of Virginia that works for all, and I get 6 words and 3 thoughts. It's about Virginia, it's about work, and it's about for all. Virginia. The reason I like being in the Senate, and a lot of governors come to the Senate and hate it, including your senior senator, Mark Warner, who's also your friend, who complained nonstop for 4 years. It's such a different job. When you're governor, you're at the top of your pyramid. Then you come into the Senate, and I came in, I was 95th in seniority, way at the bottom. And that's a hard adjustment. And a governor has the ability to sometimes say, we'll do this, we'll do that, and just plow ahead. Well, Senate, it takes longer. You've got to persuade at least 51, sometimes 60 people to get stuff done. But the reason I've liked the job is I like my colleagues, I like my staff, I like my committees. I'm on the Armed Services Committee, which is important to all of us. I am either the last remaining senator or one of just 2 to have a child in the military. Many of you know my oldest son, Nat, who's been coming here with me since he's a kid. He's an infantry commander in the Marine Corps. I'm on the Foreign Relations Committee, I'm on the Budget Committee, but in the last year and a half, Doug, and the reason I'm doing these ads, I've been added to the Health, Education, Labor, Pension Committee. So I fought for 4 years because I wanted to be on the committee that deals with all of healthcare, all of education, everything in labor from minimum wage to collective bargaining to workplace safety standards, and then all pension issues. I'm working real close with the UMW. We found a solution on their healthcare, which was going to expire at the end of April 2017. Found a solution. Now we're working to find a solution on the UMW pension issue. So, like my committees, but what I really like about the job is I either listen to Virginians who tell me about problems that I didn't know about. So many things that I've done in the Senate start with, hey, Senator, did you know that military spouses' unemployment rate's 3 to 5 times the national average? I didn't know that. Did you know that of all the medical research we do in this country, only 1% is directed at children's conditions? I didn't know that. People tell me things all the time, if I listen, that I didn't know, and then we need to try to find solutions. And that is a really interesting part of the job. And then the other part of the job that's interesting is people will say, hey, here's something cool we're doing. How come we can't do more of this? So it's hearing about problems, but it's also about hearing about solutions. And Doug, you mentioned this ad. I was governor, and I was giving a speech on tourism in Roanoke. And the president of Tech, Charlie Steger, at that time passed away a year ago. President of Carillion, Ed Murphy, who passed away about a year ago. They said, can we meet and talk to you? And sure. So we met in a room after, and they said, we want to start a medical school and research campus in Roanoke because we're not training enough physicians who will stay in Southwest Virginia. And we think we can do research here that will help save people's lives. That part of Roanoke, you might remember where Victory Stadium was. It was kind of dilapidated. It's down in the floodplain. It wasn't necessarily built up. Nothing much was going on there. If you look at that now, it's a massive complex. And they are training and graduating physicians, many of whom are staying right here in Southwest Virginia. And it's enabled Virginia Tech, which is a great research institution, but it was never top 25. Because if you don't have a med school, you're not going to crack top 25. Now Virginia Tech, with all their other great research, will be able to crack top 25 research institutions in the United States because they have a med school. Of course, I didn't have that idea. But it was somebody who came to me and said, hey, Governor, here's this thing. Will you help us? And I wrote a bill and introduced it to fund the construction of it and the expansion of VCU in Richmond and the expansion of EVMS in Norfolk. I learned a valuable lesson. You guys know the story about the founding of UVA-Wise back when it was Clinch Valley College. Papa Joe Smitty was working on it. They were going to put it into the community college system and not let it be a 4-year. And he was fighting to keep it as even as Clinch Valley College, but have it to be a 4-year. And he realized there weren't enough votes in Southwest Virginia, so he traded on a deal involving voting for, got legislators from Southwest to vote for liquor by the drink, which is what the Northern Virginia guys want, and then all the Northern Virginia guys voted for Clinch Valley to be 4 years. So I learned from Papa Joe that if you want to do something, sometimes if I wanted to do this thing in Southwest Virginia, I had to put something in the pot for Richmond and Hampton Roads too, and then everybody was happy. But now that school's up and running and we are training physicians. So that's what I love about the job, either hearing about problems, trying to solve them, or hearing about solutions and trying to help do them. Second is the campaign is about a Virginia that works. Just working people. I grew up in an ironworking and welding household and taught kids to be welders and carpenters in Honduras. Then I was a mayor doing economic development deals, governor doing economic development deals. And you don't do it quite the same way as a senator. It's kind of the governor's thing, but working on the Health, Education, and Labor Pension Committee, workforce needs, career and technical education, funding for community colleges, funding for Pell Grants and Stafford loans. These are things that we work on every day, and the workforce is part of the key to our economic success in communities like Wise or anywhere. And then the other thing is infrastructure, more infrastructure. It's got to be about road, got to be about broadband, and I can work on those issues on the budget committee. Got to be about fair wages, got to be about a tax code that's fair to working people. I don't like the fact that right now, especially after the deal that was done last December, we have a tax code that treats corporations better than individuals, and a tax code that treats investors better than people who are there living through wages and salaries. And so we need to, create a more equitable tax code. But then the last thing is it's got to be a Virginia that works for all. And I really believe that. Those last two words of the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm tell people, my staff's sick of hearing me say this, I'm obsessed with those words. Because I think, bluntly, right now the messages that's being sent at the top is often not for all. It's for a few or for some, or often just for me. And everything about those of us who are in public life, you are Commonwealth's attorney, Commissioner of Revenue, we're not doing this for me. We shouldn't do this for me. We should do it for all. And I think at this moment in time, as Democrats, that's what we really bring to the table. We're clearly for all. When the Democrats last year got Medicaid expansion passed in Virginia, they voted for it even though they knew half the people who were going to get Medicaid weren't Democrats, weren't voting for them, might not vote for them, might not even say thank you. But we were really glad as Democrats to do heavy lifting, right? To do Medicaid for 400,000 more Virginians, even if they wouldn't support us, because we believe in that for all value at the tail end of the Pledge of Allegiance. By the same token, one of my most, it is my single most memorable time in the U.S. Senate. It was a year ago, July 27th, 2017, 2:30 in the morning. In the same way that the Democrats had done heavy lifting to expand Medicaid even for Republicans, the Republicans for months had positioned to try to repeal the Affordable Care Act. President Trump said want to do it day one. Took him 6 months to get it through the House. Now it's into the Senate. Now we're on the floor of the Senate. And it's D-Day. We're going to have a vote about it. The CBO said if that vote succeeded, 20 to 30 million Americans would lose health insurance. And we knew who they were too. Half of them were Republicans. And I'm talking to my colleagues, hey, why are you guys working so hard and making your top priority the repeal of something that will cost 10 to 15 of your own supporters health care? It's, look, I don't have to say this because everybody in every family lives this. Health care is not renaming a post office. It's like the most important thing in your life. Next to your relationships, your health is the most important thing in your life. So a party that would make it a priority to expand health care, a party that would make it a priority to take away health care, there just couldn't be a clearer difference. And so in 2018, I think we have to make that pitch that if America's still a nation that believes in that for all value at the end of the Pledge of Allegiance, then there's one party that's standing for that right now, and that's the Democratic team. I'm doing a lot of work. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, man. And I'll say this, and then I'm glad to open it up, take a question, and then just mingle around and visit a little bit. We have a real opportunity this year. I think I was doing 3 events yesterday, and 2 yesterday, 1 today, and 1 tomorrow with the Anthony Flock event on the 9th. We have 11 great candidates for Congress around the state. Because of the miracles of gerrymandering, Democrats have all the statewide offices in Virginia, but only 4 out of the 11 congressional seats. That's a challenge for Alicia in your race. You're running in gerrymandered seats. Well, we have a lot of gerrymandered seats, but even on gerrymandered seats, we could have an election this year where we could go from 4 out of 11 to 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. So I'm doing events with everybody. And what it would mean in terms of a message for us to have a big November, just like last year. We swept the statewide offices. We won more seats in the House of Delegates. Democrats won more seats last year in the Virginia House of Delegates than any year since 1872. And that was because of energized folks just like you all over the Commonwealth who were off the sidelines and said, we want to send a big message. And we can do the same thing. Virginia can play a role in taking back the House. If I stay in the Senate, we're just 2 down. It's 49-51. If we could pick up 2, we would have the Senate majority. Then we wouldn't have to have an anti-public education person, the Secretary of Education, and wouldn't have to have bad judges. We could set up the hearings. We could determine the topics. We could compel the witnesses. We could subpoena the documents. We would be in charge of that, and that's what we could get if we work real hard. So it is just wonderful to be back. Ann is jealous. You guys know that I have a much better half, not just a better half, but a much better half whose heart is really here, having grown up in Roanoke but spent summers here. I took the staff by to see the house where she used to spend every summer a couple blocks away before we came over. She's doing an event with the Scott County Democratic Women down in Gate City right now. And then we're going to go down and do a couple events down in Lee before we head back. And tomorrow we're doing events in Wythe and Franklin. And we'll be back. I'm coming back for the UMW Fish Fry the 22nd of September, and she'll be back too, and before the election. But it's a special day for me anytime I'm here. And you always make me feel so welcome. And I'll tell you one last thing, and I don't say this many places, but this is really a group of friends. I sometimes have folks say to me, hey, look, why don't you go to the county where you're getting 40%, 45%, 50%, 60%, 70%? Why don't you go to the county where the population's 100,000, 300,000, 500,000 or more? Why spend time in a place when the population's smaller and you may get 32 or 33%? And here's what I always tell them. In a county where I get 25, 30, 35%, they are my most loyal supporters. Well, why do you say that? In a county where I get 80% of the vote, it's not hard to put up the Tim Kaine sign if everybody on your block has the Tim Kaine sign. But the people who will stick with you, election in, election out, even if it's 30% or 30%, they're your most loyal supporters. Now, you go because you want to get it up to 35 or 40 or 45, and you won't be able to do that if you don't go. But you also go because you owe it to the people who are your most loyal supporters. I'll never forget one of my favorite memories in 24 years of being in office and campaigning was I did an event here in Wise once, right after a hurricane dumped tons of rain and knocked out all electricity in Richmond. And I'll never forget my guilt feeling driving out of my driveway, leaving Ann with 3 kids under age 10 at the time. I got to go campaign. And we didn't have electricity in the house. But I had set up, I was going to come do an event here, and I didn't want to let people down. And so I came down here, and we did the event. It was at a school. I can't remember which school it was, but I remember walking to my car afterwards, and somebody from town came and said, I know electricity is out at your house up in Richmond. I've seen this on the news. It still is. Hey, listen, I made some food for you guys to take home to your family. And handed me a big cake that I was to take home. And nobody did that anywhere else in Virginia. There's 134 cities and counties in Virginia. The only place anybody's ever done that for me is right here. So it's a special day anytime I can come to Wise and come to Big Stone. Thank you guys for coming today. Thanks so much. Let's go win. I'd love to take a question, take advice, get educated, sir.
Tim, as you know, healthcare and Republicans' desire to annihilate it is a concern for minors, even have a second concern about healthcare because the Byrd Amendment allows, if we lose that, it almost does away with black lung.
Right.
And people are suffering black lung with this epidemic is even worse than people think it is. You know, they're going to lose that benefit because I don't think Republicans care about that. But we need to get more Democrats in Washington to try to fix this.
The next event I'm doing, I'm actually going down to Pennington Gap to see the hospital that's reopening, but then I'm having a sit down with a lot of minors to talk about black lung issues. And you're right, the minor health care, in addition to the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid just generally, black lung issues are very much on the chopping block when it comes to the budget politics of today. Every time the president gives us a budget, he proposes to wipe out virtually everything, and then we have to go find Republicans and put it back. Let me tell you, on the minors, we have a little bit of an ace in the hole. It's not a guarantee, but we have a little start, like a head start. When we were working with the minors over at the Compact on the healthcare issue, there is a pool of money that had been collected over time for reclamation of lands that has been underused. And so we're reclaiming a lot of land, that's fine, but a lot of money was sitting there unused and with no plans to use it. We were able to pull some of that money in to help us stabilize the health care for minors. And we're now trying to work on the pension issues the same way, but there is still money out there that we can use to help try to find a solution. There's other unions, the Teamsters have a big pension issue, Central States and other unions do too, but what they don't have is they don't have the dedicated source of money that's directly connected to their work that could potentially be used. So we are working very hard on both Black Lung, but also the UMW pension issue. UMW and other unions have pension problems. We've got a bipartisan congressional group that's looking at it, that's going to put a proposal on the table at the end of the year. I'm on the pension committee to try to help us resolve pension issues for mine workers and others. But I will say, even if we can't easily solve every issue, the mine issues are a little bit easier to solve because there is this a pot of money that is specifically for mines and miners that isn't really useful for everybody else, but might help us find a solution there. So that's how we solved the first part of the healthcare thing, and we're going to keep working on Black Lung and the pension issue. About other questions? Thank you. Yeah, please. And is your name again? Is it?
It's Adam.
Adam.
I work for Southern Appalachian Mountain Steward as their coordinator.
Yep.
We work on land issues and,
Yep.
or mining issues directly, and the reclamation is actually one of the big things we're getting ready to go to DC with our alliance
Good.
to talk to people about. One of the questions I have on that is, how do we ensure that that money that comes down in this way from reclamation actually ends up going to the communities that are affected and are in need of that money, as opposed to like the big players like Dominion or the big that doesn't end up translating into the communities actually building a sustainable economy, and also doesn't translate into just rebuilding another extraction economy.
Did everybody hear Adam's question? Remember when I told you that part of my job I like is when somebody says, "Hey, Senator, did you know?" And I hadn't really thought about it. So this is one of those questions. So there's money that can be used for reclamation, but there's a better way and a worse way to use it. And if that money's being collected and it's going to big operators who have their own resources and not going to communities that don't have their own resources, then we're wasting it. We're not doing the right thing with it. So if you come up, you ought to come talk to my guy Nick Barbash, who's my environment guy and works on reclamation issues. Because if there is a different way that the money should be programmed to do more good, we'd be very interested in having that conversation. I'd appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, sir.
Senator, I want you to thank your son for his service for me.
Absolutely.
And even if he is a Marine.
We got an Army guy here.
But the one thing, and I work with veterans, and there are major issues that if you're not a veteran, you know somebody who is a veteran.
Everybody.
And they run into these issues. And I always run into people that say, so-and-so, yeah, he's got this issue and that issue. Just to remind that, keep them in your heart.
Absolutely.
When you're up there, that they don't get lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I say to David, and thank you for your service and for raising this issue. I'm on the Armed Services Committee, but there's a separate committee, the Veterans Committee, that I'm not on, but we do veterans work every day. Calls into our office. The two top ones are immigration issues and veterans issues. And the veterans issues almost always fall into one of two categories. I can't get an appointment fast enough for my particular medical issue. I seldom hear that the quality of the care is bad. I hear the opposite, that my caregivers are great. But getting the appointment is hard, so that's one. And the second one is also a waiting list issue. I can't get the VA to rule on my disability application, or if they rule, then there's an appeals process that takes 3 years. So in terms of finally getting to the end of it, it just takes too long. And what kind of breaks your heart about the disability issue, I'll say this, is a veteran once said to me, when I was in the military, they treated me like I'm on the team. And as soon as I was a veteran and I was applying for disability, they treated me like I was not on the team and I was trying to get something over on them. And to be treated like you're on the team and then immediately, like 2 days later, now I'm suspicious of you, that's just unpatriotic and unfair. So I think what we're trying to grapple with in both of these ways is what can we do? More staff, better management, better organization, electronic records, to bring down the waiting times for appointments, and what can we do to bring down the time to process a disability application. And that, I hear that loud and clear from veterans in Virginia.
I've run into a lot of veterans that have gotten lost. I worked with an individual who was a Vietnam veteran in Duffield Jail,
Yep.
Silver Star, honorably
Wow.
discharged.
Wow, Silver Star.
And, you know, that's just below
Yeah.
Medal of Honor. And I talked to him, I said, you know, where'd you get lost? You didn't get out to end up there.
Yeah, yeah.
And those are the guys that I'm working with
Good.
right now.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you so much for doing that. Please.
You know, we talk about a lot of these things, healthcare, education, and all that kind of stuff, and places like this, and all over the country, places in the world like this seem to suffer the most when it comes to education and healthcare and all of these things.
Yeah, any cuts hit hardest.
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is because a lot of the people here are below the poverty line, and when that happens, you don't get the best schools, you don't get the
Right.
best hospitals, you don't get these things. And being very optimistic in that we take the House and we take the Senate, do you see a way that we can push to where that doesn't happen anymore with a version of universal healthcare and
Yeah.
education?
Yeah, let me talk about it, because I think President Trump failed in trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act because every Dem, plus Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and John McCain, my friend John McCain, he wasn't gonna. It was funny when McCain voted with us to save the Affordable Care Act. My colleagues were saying, "Oh, he's going to vote with the other guys," because he had cast some bad votes on the Affordable Care Act. And I said, "Look, I had to tell you this. He's my chairman on Armed Services. John McCain's not going to a hospital, getting diagnosed with glioblastoma, being in a hospital with a lot of sick people, and coming back and voting to take their." I don't care what his votes were. I don't care. You can give me the Vegas odds, but I'm going to tell you, John McCain's voting with us. And thank God that he did. So what do we do now going forward? We have to stop. President Trump knows he can't beat it with votes, but he's trying to nick and cut it to death. Budgetary cuts, in the mandate, doing all kinds of things. So we have to do a next step forward. And I'll tell you what I think the next step forward might be. I have a bill that I introduced with Michael Bennett of Colorado. We call it Medicare X. And here's the idea. Medicare, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, would develop a public insurance policy that would cover all of the essential benefits under the Affordable Care Act, put it on the exchange so that anybody could buy it anywhere in the United States. Now, Medicare doesn't have to cover a profit margin. Medicare doesn't have to return to shareholders. Medicare doesn't have to pay fancy salaries to big execs. Medicare doesn't have to pay state, local, and federal taxes. Medicare doesn't have to advertise on the 630 News. If you turn on the 630 News, it's all pharma ads. Everybody knows about Medicare, so you don't have to advertise. Medicare doesn't have to set up a network. They already have it. They don't have to set up a provider network. They already have it. They don't have to set up a fee schedule. They already have it. So a Medicare policy would be dramatically cheaper than any private insurance policy. We would put it on the exchange. We would not force you to buy it. If you like your Anthem policy, if you like the policy you're getting at work, fine. You just stick with that. But if you want another option that will be cheaper, we're going to have one for you. And if you qualify for a subsidy under the Affordable Care Act, you could take that subsidy and apply it to bring the Medicare premium down even more. We could do that, and it would create an additional option that would be lower cost everywhere in the United States. Would increase taxes by a penny, because they collect a premium to cover their cost. Would increase the deficit by a penny. Wouldn't touch the Medicare Trust Fund. And for people who move, and a lot of people move, if you move to a new place, you don't know whether your company that's writing the policy here is going to write the policy in Tennessee, but everybody knows Medicare exists in every zip code. So that is the proposal that I have on the table. It's a little bit different. You hear discussion about single payer. That would be, one payer only, This is truly a public option, but it would be a public option I think would be so attractive that would create such a good, more reasonably priced option that it would move forward. So that's the one thing, and I'm glad to be on the committee to work on it. And on the education side, look, cost of college. I mean, you've been real active with the Dems at UVA, as you know. I mean, cost for anybody now. You kids get out and they got a big debt on their shoulders, and they're paying it off 15 years later, sometimes 20 years later. And with debt, you delay buying a car, that hurts the local economy. You delay buying a house, that hurts the local economy. You can't necessarily take the job that you want to take because you got this big debt, so you have to take a different kind of job. If you have trouble paying student loans, you can't do what somebody does who's got a loan on a yacht or a casino or a building. You can't use the bankruptcy laws to restructure and I'll make a deal and I'll cut my payment, but I'll extra. You can't. We've made it impossible to use the bankruptcy laws to refinance student loans when you can use it for anything else. That's also idiotic. So we need to figure out ways to bring costs down, Pell and Stafford loan, to allow students to use the same tools that anybody would use to renegotiate loans and debt. And that is something that Dems are strongly for. Some notion, some are free college, some are free college, or I believe in debt-free college. I wouldn't say free college. I believe in debt-free college, and the reason that I do, bluntly, is this. If it was free college and the federal government paid for my 3 kids to go to college, I can afford college for my kids. I can afford it. My kids are all through college. But if the federal government paid for my kids when I can afford it, that would be money out of health care or something else that somebody else couldn't afford. So I would say go for debt-free college, and that would be the better strategy. But with Democrats in the House, and I think we are going to pick up the House, I think, bluntly, I think the Senate, maybe 45% chance. We got a good dynamic and a tough map. We could do it, but we got a little bit of an uphill battle here. But those are the kinds of things, health and education, those are the kind of things we will definitely focus on. Yeah, please, and I'm going to go 2 more, and then just say hi for a
Well,
minute.
back to the health issues.
Yep.
Will there be something done, you think, if we get a Democratic Congress to control the cost of pharmaceuticals? Particularly, this area is hard hit with insulin costs going sky
Yeah,
high.
I've been reading about this. Yeah, so control of pharmaceutical costs. On my health committee, we actually are pretty bipartisan. So the Republican chair is Tennessee Senator Lamar Alexander, and Lamar was a governor who had a Medicaid program, and he was the head of the University of Tennessee, and they had a med school. So he's not like an ideologue, he's a practical guy, and we've been having a series of hearings about healthcare costs, including a number about costs of pharmaceuticals. We've been having the hearings because he has said after the election, we want to have all the hearings about why, and then after the election, then we'll have the hearing about what to do about it. So I think there's a high likelihood that in the Senate, we will do some things dealing with prescription drug costs. If the House goes Dem, the House will definitely do it. Then the issue it'll be interesting. We'll have to put a bill on President Trump's desk and see what it'll do. Now, there are some things that if we put a bill on President Trump's desk, the prediction would be he would veto it because we are Dems and the president are at odds. Not on the cost of prescription drugs. I mean, if you listen to the Trump presidential campaign, he sounded exactly like Democrats did on the cost of prescription drugs, including negotiated pricing under Medicare Part D and a whole series of things. Now, he and his team haven't done that yet, but they've certainly said they support it. So I think if we were to put a good bill on his desk dealing with trying to control prescription drug prices, I think the odds would be that he would join with us and sign it. So I think we would have the votes for something meaningful in the Senate. We would need to take House control. But if we could do that, I think we could work with the president on that. Last question, Alicia.
I don't know that mine's a question as much as just a broad sort of sweeping statement.
Yeah.
I would love to see more to actively disprove the mythos that the Republican Party is the party of family values.
Yeah.
Because I may have an agenda in saying this, but as the mother of a 6-month-old child, I felt until recently that I was very blessed to work with an employer who partnered with the state of Tennessee to get me a 16-week FMLA to take with my son. I had 16 weeks to be at home with him, but it was unpaid except for my personal pay and sick leave.
Yeah.
And I was blessed because I had friends having children after me who had to go back to work before me, and I thought, wow, this is great. I've got 16 weeks with him. Until I start reading articles and studies about other countries who the bare minimum that they provide for their families, mothers and fathers, is 6 months. We're the only industrialized nation in the world that does not provide that. That is anti-family. And when you start listening to Republicans talk about it, it's, well, why should I pay for you? Why should I pay for that for you? But you're the party of family values.
Right.
Unfortunately, talk is cheap, and if we got something through, it would be on the coattails of the president's daughter wanting to expand family leave.
Yeah.
But everything that we've talked about today, education, healthcare, family leave, are family values.
Right.
And if the Democrats can push that, then we are the party of family values.
How about that? It is interesting. So paid family leave is a next frontier force that we have to push. There's, I have a Republican colleague who I get along with fine, Marco Rubio, who's got a family leave proposal, but he's going to fund it by taking money out of Social Security. And it's like, hold on a second. I mean, you cannot take it out of my left pocket and put it in my right pocket and tell me I got something. I didn't get it. If you moved it from one pocket to the next. And look, there's already Social Security issues that we have to grapple with. So that is not going to be the right strategy. So it is the case that other nations do this, and they're not doing it for fun. They're doing it because they understand how important that those first months of life are, to the development of a lifelong learner and a great adult. Those first months are absolutely critical. So there's good examples out there that we should follow. And I talked to you about my belief in the Democrats as a for-all party. Sometimes the other guys want to claim like they're the patriotic ones. But if you look at, why do we have our children say that every day, in every classroom, in every school in the United States? And we have to say those words, that for all at the end, It's because that's what patriotism is. And if you ask people, okay, Democrats trying to expand health care for people, Republicans trying to take it away, who's the for-all team? We have to reclaim not only mental, like family values. We have to claim we're the pro-military party. We are the party that is much more likely to battle for veterans' benefit. Much more likely. My opponent, I'm on the Armed Services Committee. We just did a budget that a big military pay increase. Got it passed. He told President Trump to veto it. And what, he's now saying, like he's the pro-military guy? We're battling for troops. We're battling for vets. We are pro-military family. We are pro-family values. We are pro-for-all. These are patriotic, basic values. And you're right, I think you did a good job on the family values. We got to reclaim all those things and point out to people that that's who we are.
How can people take up for him? How do they do that? With all this stuff on TV, how in the world are they?
You're asking me. This is in the realm of psychiatry and stuff. And after this week especially.
They think that you're not Christians and you believe in abortions and all this stuff and everything. That's not true, because you got a lot of Republicans, that to get a vote or something like that. But that don't mean that, and the Bible don't say, as a lot of people will tell you, that the Bible says that Trump's supposed to be president. And I said, I've read the Bible. I've read the Bible 3 or 4 times, but I've not seen anything in there.
Well, I'll tell you something about our Republican senators, because I have good relations with everybody. I don't fight with anybody. So 51 Republican senators, I know them very well. There's only a third. There's only 15 who just are like, Donald Trump's the greatest and don't ever say anything. 35 are really worried. And they've been worried from the first day.
They're not saying it.
But they're not saying it. So this is the point. You got my punchline. They're very worried. Of that 35, 10 will say it. And these are Republicans. They're not Democrats. So I'm not going to agree with them on everything. But only 10 will speak their mind. The other 25 are afraid. If I say something against the president, then the Republican base won't like me, so they're grappling with it. But you're starting to see, like tariffs. Tariffs really hurting soybean farmers, cattle, poultry, chickens, apples, the Dublin plant that makes Volvo trucks up in Pulaski, increasing their costs, so that's hurting their workforce. So you're starting to see, I saw a statistic the other day, the tariffs are going to hit Virginia about 930 million, 100 million of it, just 100 million just in coal. It'll have a negative effect. So you are starting to see some Republicans, that they don't like that. This stuff this week, they don't like that. So I always say, in terms of persuading, I don't have to persuade them what to think. I just have to persuade them to say what they already think.
Yes.
And there are some, if they are rock solid supporters, I'm not going to change their mind.
Vote on it.
But there are a lot of people who have significant doubts, and we just have to give them liberty and space. And telling them they're wrong, that's not going to make them suddenly, you have to, use a little more honey than vinegar sometimes. I see them, at least among the Republicans in the Senate, a little more willingness now. Hold on a second. This isn't going the right way. Hey, listen, thank you guys so much. I'm heading down to